Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Lessons from My Shadow Dreams. It was storming. The sky a slab of slate with swollen thunderclouds crowding its expanse, each nudging for room. A wicked, unrelenting wind whipped chestnut hair into my eyes and mouth. Pulling it out of my face, I looked at the desolation surrounding me. Empty air met me in every direction. I don't know where I am, I realize, as the panic starts to set in, and my breathing turns shallow and rapid. On my hands and knees, kneeling on what appears to be sand made from stardust, I take a calming breath and rise until I'm standing. What is this place? Where am I? The last thing I remember is going to bed, my lids shutting to the lavender of my walls as I slowly drifted off to sleep. Not knowing what else to do, I started walking. And that's when the voices began, and the shadows formed. At first, it was small. It was subtle. A whisper here, a mutter there, voices that got louder as I trudged on. I struggled against the wind, hugging my arms to myself, each hand gripping an elbow until my knuckles turned white as chalk. As I walked, the black, star-lit sand at my feet began to rise with the wind, forming shadowy figures that strode alongside me, the overlapping voices tumbling from their open mouths. I watched in morbid fascination, my feet slowing as their dark forms became recognizable, their faces slowly morphing into a colorless version of the faces I know. On my right was my mother, a horrendous, nightmare version of my mother, her blue eyes dark as coal, and her face twisted with malice. What are you doing? Really, Midge? Are you fucking stupid? What's wrong with you? Came from the cavern that was her mouth. My eyes went wide, fear and pain forming as tears that threatened to spill. You're not good enough. Why would I want to touch you? You're not what I want. Came from my left, and my head whipped to see an equally nightmarish version of my ex. At this point, my feet had slowed until I was almost at a complete stop. More and more, figures from both my past and present began to form and dance around me, each hurling their own unique version of verbal awfulness. With each invisible blow, I shrunk until I was crouched on the shifting sand, hands splayed over my face to cover sight and sound. I squeezed my eyes, silently begging for it to end, for the voices and noise and all the venom of the world to stop. "Midge, breakfast?" I gasped, jolting awake to my mom's voice calling from the kitchen. As reality settled in, a sick dread pooled in my gut at the vague nightmare I'd left behind. "It was a bad dream, Midge. Just a bad dream," I mumbled to myself as I rubbed the sleep from my eyes. I tramped downstairs, the thick soles of my boots making loud thuds on each carpet-covered step. I slid into a distressed wooden chair at our equally distressed dining table that doubled as our breakfast nook. As I shoved eggs in my mouth, scrambled just how my mom knows I like it, I thought about our history exam today with rising anxiety. I was not the best at memorizing details, like dates or times, and last night Amy had another drama round with her douche of a boyfriend. My mom sat across from me, early morning sunlight streaming in from the window sink, sipping coffee from the chipped Mom of the Year mug I got her for Christmas last year, before Dad left. Before it all fell apart, we sat together in silence. She analyzed me over her mug as I finished off my butter-soaked toast. "You okay, honey? You seem stressed," she asked with a slight tilt of her head. I nibbled my toast while staring at my plate, not wanting to admit how egregiously unprepared I was for the day's exam, or the nightmare I'd endured that clung to me like static. It felt like I was seeing reality underwater, my senses warbled and muffled, making everything as impactful as an echo. My mom cleared her throat, snapping me out of my reverie. "Midge?" she asked, her gaze holding concern as lines formed between her dark brows. "I'm okay, just not as ready for my exam today as I'd like to be," I answered simply. The truth was, I wasn't ready at all for anything. My mom pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes, a clear sign she knew I was lying. To be fair, technically, I really was worried about the exam today, but I also was still disturbed by my nightmare, which stuck to me like a dark, immovable shroud. And it being my parents' divorce anniversary didn't exactly help. As if sensing my thoughts, my mom's eyes darted to the calendar on our white linoleum fridge, absolutely covered with magnets and pamphlets or flyers. Instantly, her gaze softened when she recognized the date. "Hey, it's gonna be okay, baby. I know today will be hard, but you'll be okay. Plus, your father is still coming for a family dinner this Friday," she said with a quirk of her mouth, as if that should excite me, as if that fixed everything. I simply nodded as I tried to swallow my last bite of toast, which had turned to sandpaper in my throat. "Gotta go, Mom. Thanks for breakfast." Before she could answer, I quickly grabbed my backpack and was out the door. I sat in history, staring blankly at the open-ended questions in front of me. Mr. Sikowitz sat at his desk in the front of the class, hunched over papers he was likely grading for a different set of students, his red pen lightly roving and marking with steadfast eyes. I looked back down at the unanswered prompts in front of me and felt my heart start to quicken. Gods, I'm screwed. Dad would be so disappointed, I thought with increasing fear. My breathing became slightly uneven, and with the panic, my nightmare from the night before reached towards the front of my mind. This was the last thing I needed. But it seemed the more I tried to repress the images and the memory, the harder they fought back. Shadows began to gather at the edge of my vision. That same smoky, starlit sand from the dream clustering along my peripheral. I blinked hard 2 or 3 times while keeping my head down, trying to force this contorted melding out of existence through sheer denial. But to no avail. The darkness stayed. Slowly, and with threatening dread, the dregs of my nightmare creeped towards my desk until it surrounded me on every side. I briefly darted my eyes around the room, desperate to find some reaction, any recognition from my classmates of the nightmare unfolding. But I was left wanting. The line between dream and reality was paper thin, blurring further as the familiar wraith-like figures began to swirl upwards and form, then shattered entirely as my nightmare came to life. My mother was again on my right, with a mouth black as pitch and her blue eyes drained of color once more. "What makes you think you can do this, Midge? Answer me, Midge. What's wrong with you? Are you fucking stupid?" she hissed as her ghastly form drifted towards my ear, her teeth gnashing with each syllable. It wasn't exactly the same as the nightmare, but it was damn similar. Now my father, in his trademark suit and tie, took shape in front of me, causing me to flick my gaze upwards. Looking was a mistake. His usually coiffed hair laid limply on his head. His eyes were endless black holes, and he stood with his arms crossed, intimidating and unmovable despite his form. His slightly transparent clothes were rumpled and worn, which wasn't like him at all. And he looked at me with a face of disgust and hatred as I'd never known. At least, not from him. "Grow up, Midge. What's your problem? Why can't you just get this right?" he shouted, somehow slamming his not-so-solid hand on my desk, causing me to jump to my feet with a yelp, my chair making a loud crash as collateral. "Ms. Sloan, can I help you with something?" My head whipped over to Mr. Sikowitz, and just like that, as I met his dark brown eyes, the spell was broken. I looked around and realized that the echo of my nightmare had vanished, and all eyes were on me, as if deciding if they needed to grab the straitjacket now or later. I audibly swallowed. No, sorry, Mr. Sikovitz, I said, as I haphazardly righted my chair off the ground and sat while keeping my head and eyes firmly down, my dark hair creating a curtain on either side of my pallid face. The rest of the day passed in an anxiety-filled blur. At every turn and every corner, I looked for the shadows, waited for the starlit sand to reappear, and inch along the edge of my vision, anticipating the god-awful convergence of my nightmare and reality. But it never did. I stared out the bus window on the way home, watching the rain spatter the glass in large, heavy drops. "Hi, honey," my mom hollered from the kitchen when she heard me walk through the door, her voice warm and rich over the cold I felt in my bones, like a homespun blanket. Our house was a pretty open floor plan, with the kitchen slightly sectioned off, but having two large archways on either end of its L-shaped design. I watched her through this opening for a moment, trying to reconcile the nightmare version of her I saw at school with the flesh and blood in front of me. She was currently unloading the dishwasher, and when her hello was met with silence, she turned to look at me, her arm pausing briefly as she made to put away a plate. Her face scrunched, and she immediately put the dish on the counter. "What's wrong, honey? Did something happen at school?" I tried to speak. I tried to open my mouth to tell her about all of it, but nothing would come except tears that began to blur my vision. "Oh, honey," my mom said, as she strode over to me, crossing the distance in 3 or 4 strides due to her unfairly long legs. I let her hug me, soaked up the feeling of being wrapped in her arms, and for a solid couple of minutes, we stood in the entryway like that. I reveled in her warmth, the sensation of her solid arms around me, and memorized every detail that made her real. Keeping contact with a hand on my shoulder, she guided me to the couch where we sat, knees angled towards each other. "Honey, what is it?" she asked. I looked at her, and at first I could only stutter. As I struggled to form coherent words, I felt my anxiety and panic start to rise. The shadows were at the edge of my vision again, causing my breathing to turn rapid and shallow. "Honey?" my mom asked, leaning closer. I could barely hear her, barely see her over the pounding of my own heart. "Midge," my mom said, a bit louder now, giving my leg a slight shake as she placed her hand on my knee. The shadows and the darkness were beginning to take shape now, starlit sand rolling across the ground as it crept ever closer. Tears pooled along my lids, causing my vision to blur. Suddenly, warm, soft hands enclosed my face and my mom's face My real mom's face swam in front of me. "Midge," she seemed to say in almost a whisper. "Look at me, look at me," she said, increasing the pressure around my head. "You are not broken, okay? I don't know exactly what you're seeing, but it's not real, okay? I'm real. I'm here," she said, taking the limp hand from my lap and gently placing it over her heart. I felt the softness of her wool sweater under my fingertips, like touching a cloud made of silk. I focused on her eyes, blue, just like they were supposed to be. "Your mom's, right here, Midge, right here. Not that ghoulish thing of nightmares," I thought to myself, as the vile shadow, puppeting as her, pushed and crowded closer along my peripheral. "That's it, baby. I'm right here. Breathe, honey. Breathe with me. Focus on my voice, on my face. I'm right here," she said with a squeeze of my fingers, as she had removed her hands from my head and was now holding my own in her lap, her gaze unwavering. I took a steadying breath. "Just breathe, Midge. That's all you have to do. Just breathe." I counted to 10 as I inhaled, and did the same on the exhale as my mom, keeping hold of my hands, did the same. "That's it, honey. Breathe. Just breathe. 10 in and 10 out. You can do this." I nodded, and as I expanded my lungs in and out, feeling my pulse start to slow, blessedly, the shadows began to ebb, receding from the edge of my vision. The grotesque, half-formed versions of my loved ones melting and fading away, bit by bit. By about the 5th or 6th of these exercises, the nightmare was all but gone, the shadows having slunk back to whatever hellish mindscape they belonged to. "There she is," my mom said with relief, seeing my eyes clear and the panic gone, a slight smile playing on her lips. I crumpled, burying my head into her chest with small sobs. "Oh, honey," she let out softly, stroking the top of my head as only a mom can. "Has this happened before?" she asked gently. I lied, shaking my head slightly as I kept it tucked into the crook of her arm. Gods, her sweater felt like the softest pillow. I soaked up the comfort. "Mid, do you know why your father left?" I whipped my head up, pushing out of her arms, taken aback by the subject change. Realizing I wasn't going to answer her, she continued, but her face took on a faraway look, as if trying to see through the smog of time to the not-so-distant past. Our family, both the men and the women, have always struggled to master themselves. We have the curse of extreme feeling, of intangible emotions strong enough to drown countries. And for some of us, that leaks into our dreams. And then, sometimes, those dreams, usually the darkest of nightmares, leak into our reality. She shifted her focus back to me and asked with a tilt of her head, "Do you understand what I'm saying, Midge?" "No, not really," I mumbled, swallowing and tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. My mom leaned forward, using her thumbs to wipe away my residual tears, and took my hands in hers. "Honey, what were you feeling? What did you see?" she asked, her blue eyes piercing. I don't know," I said, avoiding her gaze. "I was sitting in class, trying to take my test, and, well, I wasn't sure of some answers. And then I was thinking about Dad, and I panicked. Then the nightmare started. But no one else could see it, just me." At this, I raised my head to look at her with wide eyes, searching for answers or preparing for a straitjacket, whichever came first. My mom pursed her lips, seeming to debate how much she should or shouldn't say. I saw the moment she decided to bear all, clear as day. "Honey, you were experiencing a moment of extreme emotion, of anxiety and fear, maybe panic. And sometimes those things can make us forget who we are, or even where we are. For the few in our family who have a very special heart, our emotions can cause our worst fears or worst anxieties to come to life. It usually takes an extreme or traumatic event. And given today's date," she trailed off, her eyes going distant again. After a moment, with a shake of her head, she returned her attention to me. She made to speak, but I stopped her before she could get a word out. "What happened with Dad?" I asked. My mom silently opened and closed her mouth, clearly struggling with what to say or how to say it. "When it happened to me while I was with your father, he thought I had gone half mad. Mine was a nightmare too, a wretched one that had me crouched in the corner like a rabid animal. Once we learned of our family history and what some of us have to deal with, he decided he didn't want to stay with someone who couldn't trust her own emotions, her own feelings, whose reality and dreams tended to mix and meld until they were one and the same." My mom's voice got progressively softer as she spoke, until it was barely above a mere whisper. "I'm so sorry, Mom," I said, taking hold of her hands and squeezing her palms. "That's all right, sweetie," she responded with a grimace, tucking another strand of chocolate brown hair behind my ear. "You know why?" Her eyes twinkled mischievously. My brow scrunched as I tried to find anything good in what had so far transpired, or what I'd been told. "Because," my mom said, clearly seeing I was coming up empty, "it's not just the bad dreams our hearts can bring to life." She smiled, placing a hand upon my cheek, rubbing small circles against my skin with her thumb. "It's the good ones, too." The above story ends, but the suspense and thrill have never stopped. Right here is another equally interesting story. Please continue listening. The unspoken relative. The door to the interrogation room creaked open. A girl was inside, still in the depths of RM sleep, did not stir. Sleep was all she had, her only escape and only therapy from her current fate. She remained curled up on top of the table like a feline, conserving her energy before the hellhounds would be turned loose on her. Haley, a psychiatrist, made her way into the room. She could see the subject. Emily had insomniac circles around her eyes that made her look like a raccoon almost. Haley felt bad for having to wake her, but if Emily wanted sleep, she would need to talk at some point. She reached out and took Emily's hands in hers. They were callow and clammy. Emily emitted a faint whimper, but her eyes remained closed. Haley let go of her hands and brushed Emily's hair. Emily stirred, and her eyes sluggishly opened. Her dark eyes, with saucers for pupils, studied the green emeralds Haley had for eyes. They remained still, watching, then closed again. "Come on, hun. Time to get up." Haley spoke, lightly shaking her. Emily whimpered and covered her face with her arms. Haley stood and scooped her off the table. She expected a fight, but Emily remained docile in her grasp. Before Haley could put her down, Emily clung to her and rested her head on Haley's shoulder. It was difficult to imagine Emily was capable of what the police were accusing her of. Emily was acting more like an 8-year-old than 18. That could be cracked up to the recent traumatic experience she endured. She had recently learned who her real father was, after he took her mother, and stepfather hostage. Her mother was currently recovering from injuries in the hospital, while her stepfather had succumbed to his injuries. Emily wailed suddenly, catching Haley off guard. The reaction was so sudden that Haley almost dropped her. "Honey," Emily buried her face in Haley's chest, with heaving sobs that made her tremble all over. Haley rubbed her back and comforted her, something that Emily never got from anyone since they found her in the house. She had passed out with the landline phone still in her grasp, with a split table beneath her that broke her fall. Haley had a job to do here, however, and that was not to comfort a possible suspect. Haley gently pried her off and sat Emily down in a chair. "I'm going to be honest," Haley began. "They suspect you conspired with your father." All the melanin drained from Emily's skin. This couldn't be happening. She quickly shook her head in denial. Emily strained herself, attempting to protest, but her voice cracked, and her words died in her throat. "You may want to see this," Haley said, handing her a tablet. A frightened moan escaped her mouth when the video started playing. When Emily learned the truth, she attacked and interrogated her stepfather in the basement for putting a wool over her eyes, while her real father was otherwise engaged upstairs. And now, law enforcement suspected she was hiding her father's whereabouts. They intended to use this footage as leverage against her if she refused to cooperate. Her knees drew up to her chest as reality washed over her. His blood was on her hands too, whether she liked it or not. But this didn't mean that she conspired with her father. They needed to know that. Emily tried to speak again, but like before, her words could not reach the surface. Like baby sea turtles being plucked away by famished seagulls before reaching the ocean, words still eluded her. She buried her face in her hands, sighing shakily. Haley placed a small notebook before her along with a pencil. Emily sniffled and started to write. "So, he took your cuffs off for good behavior?" Haley asked. Emily nodded. "And after you found out the truth, you became angry with your stepfather?" Emily replied with a reluctant nod. She wrote her next question with a trembling hand. "There's nothing I can do to avoid prison, is there?" Emily pushed the notebook over to Haley, with tears starting to trickle down her face again. "You can tell me where he is," Haley said. Emily whimpered in frustration. "I don't know where he is, because I did not conspire with him." She wrote, "It's not up to me on what happens to you," Haley began. "But you need to give them something if you wish to avoid prison. Even if you didn't conspire with him, you still assaulted your stepfather, who is now dead." Emily huffed and snatched the notebook. "My father's gun killed him, not me," she wrote. "You stabbed your stepfather with a fork. He already had a severed leg and a missing finger, which I believe had his wedding ring on it. You very well could have. Do you think a jury would let you go free after that?" Emily choked back a sob. "I'm sorry, hun. I know you were under a great deal of stress, but that still does not excuse your actions. He's one of my teachers in high school, okay? Mr. Black is what he goes by. I'm sure that's how he found out that I was his daughter." Emily wrote, "Okay, maybe that will help them find him." "Anything else?" Haley asked. "Please, I need to be there for my mom, so she pulls through." Emily wrote, "I'll see what they think about this," Haley said, taking the notebook with her. "But after what you did to your stepfather, I doubt you'll be allowed to see your mother in the hospital. It's for her own safety." Emily's face fumed in disbelief at what she heard. With that, Haley left her to sit alone with her thoughts. 2. When the sheriff entered the interrogation room, Emily's heart sank like an anchor to the depths. She sheepishly wiped her tears away with her sleeves. "Save your crocodile tears for another day," his eyes said. "You'll be held at a local hotel under house arrest till your court date," the sheriff said, attaching a tracker to her ankle. "You can use the phone inside the motel to call your mother in the hospital. Perhaps that will help you find your voice again. Better pray you find it by your court date," he continued, escorting her out. 3. On court day, her mother was not well enough to attend. However, she was thankfully still alive and recovering. Emily quietly sat next to her appointed lawyer. The judge and jury were informed that, due to the events Emily had been through, she had trouble speaking, and her lawyer would speak for her. They had given her a notebook and pen to use, to communicate as well. Emily was prepared to own up to what she did, however. The crowd was certainly a surprise, which threw her off. She hoped it stemmed from curiosity about her father, rather than hatred towards her. She nervously watched as the judge made his way to the podium. He was an older gentleman with a horseshoe mustache that commanded respect. A man with true grit that would not hesitate to punish any poor soul that dared question his authority. To the full extent of the law, he despised any scumbag attorney that would willingly fight for a defendant that was obviously guilty. Emily could not tell what his initial impression was of her just yet. Take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be mindful of the jury and the defendant. Keep y'all's voices down so they can hear themselves think. The judge spoke as the jury filed in. Emily reluctantly turned to see who her selected peers would be. 6 women of varying ages filed in first. Perhaps she had a chance of being shown mercy after all. 6 men followed, and suddenly her throat felt deprived of oxygen, and her eyes dilated like saucers. The word escaped her lips, and she quickly covered her mouth with both hands. But the room had grown silent as a Buddhist temple. It was too late. What was that, miss? The judge spoke, making her flinch. Emily quickly turned away from the jury and spoke for what felt like the first time in weeks. Nothing. Sorry. She spoke with an awkward rise in her voice. Mind repeating what you said a moment ago? I was under the impression that you didn't speak. The judge said, Objection, Your Honor. Her attorney stepped in. Overruled. You were saying, miss? The judge spoke. Emily swallowed hard, and her skin was as crimson as a lobster. Much like a lobster, she was in hot water now as well. Do you want to be held in contempt for lying to the court about your condition? The judge asked. No, I'm not, she hiccuped. Lying. Enlighten me on how you did not lie to the court, miss. The judge pressed. Your Honor, I made it clear she has difficulty speaking, and that she is, or in this case, was temporarily mute. The key word was temporarily. Her attorney spoke. Clearly, she speak for herself now, mister. Now would you or she care to repeat what her first spoken word was, so we can move forward with this case? The judge replied, Objection, Your Honor. Her attorney spoke before Emily placed her hand on his wrist. Overruled. The judge spoke to him. Please, Emily said to her attorney, before standing to face the judge. I saw someone that looked like my dad. That's all. I'm mistaken, obviously. But it took me by surprise. So, we have it on record. Repeat the exact word you spoke for me, miss. I will not ask you again. The judge said, Daddy, that's what I said. I was mistaken. Sorry, Your Honor. Emily spoke meekly. Why don't you point out the individual you mistook for him? Would you kindly? The judge spoke. A small trickle ran between her legs, and Emily winced, hating herself. In fact, why don't we show everyone what her father looks like? Shall we? The judge said. And a projector flashed a picture of Mr. Black on the wall behind him. This is the man responsible for the death of Emily's stepfather and for her mother, who is currently in hospice care. What we are here for currently, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is to figure out whether Emily knows of his whereabouts, and two, whether she conspired with him against her stepfather. The judge spoke. Now, isn't that a load of horse shit? A voice cackled. A man in the jury stood, and Emily's fears were confirmed. His disguise could fool most, but not her. You think she's capable of this? Hell, she couldn't even keep it together when she caught a glance of my face. Mr. Black laughed, pressing his revolver against another juror, urging them to walk up with him. The police officers and security guards all drew their weapons, but Mr. Black revealed his own weapon that was strapped to his chest. There was a rise of panic from the bystanders and the jury. Enough! The judge roared, and the crowd simmered down. As the Joker once said, let's not blow this out of proportion. I'll only take a moment of your time, one way or another. Mr. Black said, You've got balls showing your face around here. The judge spoke. I'm just here to make sure an innocent person doesn't go to jail. Lord knows the law has a way of fucking that up. Mr. Black replied, I propose an exchange then. You go to jail while she goes free. That, I reckon, is how it should have been all along. The judge said, Ha! You should go on stage and see how far that joke gets ya. Mr. Black cackled. What's the plan here? What's your end game? The judge asked. It's simple. If you all want to live, you let us leave quietly. Remember, the juror I replaced is elsewhere, awaiting your assistance. Mr. Black said. The judge, a veteran from the war in Afghanistan, recognized the bomb Mr. Black had strapped to his chest. It was capable of taking out a whole block. Everyone inside this building would be cooked like a Thanksgiving turkey when all was said and done. Drop y'all's weapons, the judge ordered. The officers followed suit. Let's be on our way, Emily. Mr. Black spoke. A frightened moan escaped her mouth. She had no idea her father was capable of this. He would be labeled as a terrorist in the news. There was no coming back from that. Don't waste my time, sweetheart, Mr. Black hissed, pressing his revolver against the juror's forehead. Emily whimpered and reluctantly stood up. Can you tell me where the other juror is before you go? The judge asked. Good man, Mr. Black said, opening the door to the judge's quarters. Through there was a quick exit to the parking lot. I left a note with an address under my juror seat. If anyone stops me, that place will blow too, Mr. Black said. Emily gagged as her nerves started getting the better of her. This was all too much to take in. But Mr. Black tugged her inside by the collar of her shirt, urging her to keep moving, and they ran to the exit door. Outside, there were 2 cars waiting for them. Mr. Black shoved his hostage to the floor and slammed the door shut behind him. Emily eyed both cars in confusion. She yelped when she felt something hot sting her arm. Emily looked up at her father as everything around her grew brighter. "Why?" she whimpered. "Can't risk you having second thoughts," Mr. Black replied with a wink, removing the small needle from her arm. Emily was too weak to resist when he laid her down in the back seat of a Chrysler 300. He rode in a different car, and she passed out before they drove away. 4. Emily awoke with a start in what felt like another lifetime. She was cocooned in a hammock, ready to hatch into a new life, it seemed. Her sluggish eyes registered a clustered forest of coconut palms around her, and a man sitting at a nearby table. He wore a straw hat and was sipping on a pina colada. "Welcome back," Mr. Black said. The ocean was a shimmering shade of teal in the sunlight, roaring in the distance. "Is Mom okay?" Emily slurred. "She'll be fine," Mr. Black said, "but she'll need her distance for some time before she forgives us." Let's continue with the next, no less thrilling stories. The Unnatural Diary. Part 1. The Unintended Discovery. Dust swirled in the dim light as Sarah pushed aside a stack of brittle newspapers, her fingers brushing against something unexpected, soft, worn leather. She reached into the box of forgotten books and relics, pulling free an old, weathered diary. Its edges were frayed with time, the cover nearly stripped of its once proud embossing, now smooth and cool beneath her touch. A faint residue of salt clung to its surface, as if it had weathered years of quiet decay or been touched by the sea itself. Intrigued, she carefully pried it open near the middle, where thick, textured pages crackled with age. The paper felt different, denser than usual, almost like parchment. The ink, though faded, carried an unusual shimmer, as if the words still pulsed with some lingering energy, revealing a chilling passage. I had to move quickly, but the floorboards betrayed me, groaning beneath my steps as I crept through the darkened hall. It was close. I could feel its snarling breath, cold and damp, seeping through the walls, making them feel thinner than they were. The air was thick with the weight of its presence. I had to make it to the kitchen. I had to get to the closest bag of consecrated salt before it was too late. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. The words read like a story, yet something about them felt strangely real and weren't meant to entertain, but to warn. She flipped another page, the dry parchment whispering as it moved, and something slipped loose. A note, a single yellowed slip of paper, fluttered to the attic floor. Sarah bent to retrieve it, her pulse quickening as she read the hastily scrawled words. "If you've found this, it already knows. It already knows?" The words sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. What does that mean? What already knows? Shaking off the unease, she set the diary aside, convincing herself it was just a very old diary. Nothing more. She returned to cleaning, determined to finish the task before indulging her curiosity. Later, with the attic finally organized, Sarah sank into the old desk chair she had recently dusted off and pulled from the corner. It paired well with an antique desk she had just cleaned off, a piece that had likely sat buried beneath clutter for years. Exhaustion giving way to curiosity, she reached for the diary, opening it to the first page, her fingers brushing over the worn pages, coming to the inside of the cover, where a passage so intimate it felt as though she was intruding on something deeply personal, was scrawled in elegant handwriting. "To my beautiful Colette, may the enchantment of these pages cradle your precious memories and bridge the distance between us, keeping our hearts forever intertwined. With eternal love, Roderick Shadowthorn of Moonvale Hollow." Beneath the inscription, in a more delicate script, another line had been added. "Given to me by my love on Saturday, February 28th, 1953. Sarah's pulse quickened. The names, Roderick Shadowthorn, Moonvale Hollow, felt almost otherworldly, like something plucked from a forgotten fairy tale. Sarah turned to the first entry, March 2nd, 1953. "My dearest new diary, I am excited to begin writing. I can scarcely believe my fortune. Has it only been weeks since I met Roderick? It feels as though I have known him forever, as though our souls recognized one another long before our eyes had ever met. He is unlike anyone I have ever known. His presence is both briskly confident and gentle, and his words laced with a wisdom as though he has seen lifetimes beyond my own. Fascinates me. When I am with him, the world feels richer and brighter, as if I have stepped beyond the veil and into something wondrous. His world is unlike anything I could have imagined, mystical, brimming with enchantment and secrets woven through everything there. He speaks of things I cannot yet comprehend, yet I believe every word. When he takes my hand, I swear I can feel the pulse of something ancient and powerful. He calls himself a hermit, or rather, that's what others call him. But to me, he is nothing short of extraordinary. Everything about him is mesmerizing. His long, dark waves that frame his face, the depth of his warm brown eyes, and oh, the way he looks at me, as if I am the only thing that exists in his world. It sends my heart racing, my breath catching in my throat. I have never felt so seen, so cherished. If this is love, then let me remain lost in it forever. I do not know what the future holds, nor how we will balance our lives together. But I know I wish to be with Roderick forever, and I will follow wherever this enchantment leads. Forever hopeful, Colette. Wow. Sarah exhaled the word, unable to stop the tinge of jealousy creeping into her voice. To feel that in love, to be cherished like that. She had once known that feeling, back when she and Neil were still wrapped in the bliss of their early days. But those days had faded, worn thin by time and disappointment, until all that remained was silence and a divorce finalized 3 years ago. Now, her world revolved around work, the occasional night out with friends, and a growing reluctance to let anyone get too close again. She shook off the thought and turned the page, only to feel as though something else was guiding her hand. The diary fell open to a blank page, yet at the top, written in the same elegant script, a date had already been inscribed, March 15th, 2025. Sarah's breath hitched. Her pulse pounded in her ears. That's today's date. She stumbled back, nearly losing her balance. Her mind raced for an explanation, but none made sense. The diary was old, decades old. How could this be? A chill swept through the attic, and she rubbed her arms, trying to shake the unease pressing against her chest. It's just a coincidence, a weird, creepy coincidence. Forcing a nervous laugh, she muttered, "Okay, that's enough reading for today. I just need a shower, food, and..." Before she could finish, a brilliant light erupted from the diary, flooding the attic in a blinding radiance. The air crackled, thick with an energy she could feel rushing over her skin. A high-pitched hum filled her ears as the pages of the diary flared open, their edges glowing with an unnatural heat. Sarah barely had time to scream before the light consumed her. Then, silence. The attic stood empty. The diary lay undisturbed on the desk. A new entry had appeared on the once blank page. March 15th, 2025. I could sense a release. The connection to her world is back. It seems different somehow. Oh, how I can't wait to see her again. What is this? She opened it? Who is she? She has dared to open Colette's diary. She will answer for this. She will. The sentence trailed off, the ink still wet, as if waiting to be finished. Part 2. The vanished sister. As the last of the evening sun faded into a moonless sky, Gloria settled in beside her husband, the familiar hum of their favorite television show filling the room. The night was calm, uneventful, until the phone shattered the quiet with a sharp trill. Gloria glanced at the caller ID. A slight frown creased her brow. Miranda? Sarah's friend? Why would she be calling? Perplexed, she rose from the couch, murmuring to her husband, "I'll be right back." Pressing the phone to her ear, she answered hesitantly. "Hello? Miranda? I'm sorry for calling so late. Miranda's voice wavered, the hesitation in her tone setting Gloria instantly on edge. I got your number from Sarah's records. Gloria's throat tightened. Sarah's records? We were wondering if everything was okay with her. She hasn't been to work in about a week, and we're starting to get worried. We've tried calling, leaving messages, but she hasn't answered. This isn't like her at all. And Miranda hesitated before continuing, her voice barely above a whisper. She missed an important deadline for a major project on Wednesday. Gloria gripped the phone tighter. Sarah? Missing work? Ignoring calls? Failing to meet a deadline? The words barely registered as the realization slowly settled into fear. She hadn't spoken to her sister in nearly 2 weeks. That wasn't unusual for them. Life had a way of pulling them in different directions, but Sarah not showing up for work and no word to anyone, that was impossible. That was not Sarah, and suddenly, the quiet night didn't feel so peaceful anymore. The familiar rhythm of her world began to close in. Where is my sister? By the time the police got involved, Gloria had already exhausted every possible explanation. Even Sarah's ex-husband Neil had flown into town, trying to find out what he could from their mutual acquaintances and his family in the area. But the more they searched, the deeper the mystery became. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no evidence of foul play. Sarah's car remained parked in the driveway. Her purse sat neatly on the dining table, car keys beside it. The house, meticulously arranged, just as she always kept it. Security footage only deepened the mystery. The last recording showed Sarah arriving home from work last Friday, locking the door behind her, and then nothing. No one entered. No one left, leaving the house feeling eerily undisturbed, as if she had vanished without a trace. Her co-workers, Amalia and Miranda, had been the first to raise the alarm. They knew their friend would not miss work, especially not a major deadline, not without calling, not without an explanation. This was an impossibility for someone as methodical and precise as Sarah. So where had she gone? Then there was the opened diary in the attic, sitting on the antique desk in the attic. Its cracked leather cover bore the weight of years. It wasn't Sarah's. Gloria knew that much. The pages, thick and time-worn, had been left open as if abandoned in haste. And there, scrawled in elegant yet unsettling handwriting, was a date, March 15th, 2025, last Saturday, the day after Sarah was last seen. The police had skimmed through the diary, dismissing it as nothing more than an old journal Sarah had stumbled upon. Perhaps she had been reading it, maybe even planning to write something inspired by it. After all, she had only moved into the house last October. The previous owner, a woman in her 90s, had passed away the year before, and her children had taken what little they wanted. Antiques, heirlooms, family photographs. The rest had been left behind in their rush to sell the house. But as Gloria sat at the old antique desk staring at the diary, unease slithered through her. She reached for it hesitantly, fingers grazing the worn leather cover. A whisper of movement stirred the air, though the room was still. The moment she picked up the book, a chill pricked deep in her bones. Something told her that Sarah hadn't just disappeared. She had been taken. Part 3, the final entry. Taking a steadying breath, Gloria flipped through the pages, only to have them land on the last recorded entry again. March 15th, 2025. I could sense a release. The connection to her world is back. It seems different somehow. Oh, how I can't wait to see her again. What is this? She opened it? Who is she? She has dared to open Colette's diary. She will answer for this. She will... The ink shimmered in shifting, iridescent hues of black and blue, as if the words were still being formed, not yet complete. A low hum vibrated through the attic, the air thickening with something unnatural. Gloria clenched her jaw. An aching sense of dread settled in her chest. This wasn't just a diary. This was something else. Something supernatural. Sarah, what did you do? With a deep breath, she turned the page. And March 20th, 2025. She keeps running again. I'll find her again. She will tell me where Colette is. She does not belong. She is not Colette. She fights, but she cannot escape. She will stay. If I cannot have my Colette, I found her again. She hides. These people cannot protect her from me. She is strong, but endurance lasts only so long. Gloria's stomach twisted. Sarah was alive, but she wasn't just missing. She was trapped. Somewhere beyond this world, desperation clawed at her chest. There had to be something, some way to help Sarah. Flipping frantically through the brittle pages, she stopped when she found an entry dated April 10th, 1956. The ink was uneven, smudged in places, as though written in haste. April 10th, 1956. I have kept it at bay with consecrated salt. I believe I have found a way to seal this diary. It was forged by Roderick's own hands, a doorway between both worlds. It seems impossible to destroy, but I must protect my husband, my children. The salt has bound the door. He cannot come through that way again. I did love him once, but what he was becoming, now he is lost to rage and darkness. No longer the man I loved. He is something else now, a vile creature. I pray no one ever finds this diary. I have been told, soak cloth in sea salt. Wrap the diary within it. The realms will be severed. If this works, this will be my last entry. If it doesn't, God help me. The smudged words ended abruptly. Gloria's hands trembled as she closed the diary. She knew what she had to do. Colette had sealed the diary once before. Gloria would do it again. Gloria searched the attic, her hands trembling, looking for any salt that may have been left. Thankfully, Sarah had cleaned and organized the space not too long ago. making it easier to find what she needed. But would it work? Would it not only seal the diary, but also bring Sarah back? Her fingers brushed against something cool and metallic. An old tin can with the words "consecrated salt" embossed on its worn surface. Inside, a thick, heavy bag of salt remained untouched. Waiting, anxious, Gloria quickly opened the diary to the most recent entry. Her heart pounded as she poured a thick line of salt down the center of the open pages, then traced a protective circle around it. She didn't know what she was doing, but she had to do something. It had already been a week since Sarah disappeared. The air shifted. A strange, oppressive stillness pressed down on the attic. Then the diary lifted off the desk. A plume of smoke curled from its pages as an eerie glow pulsed from within. The pages flared open, flipping wildly as a gust of wind erupted through the attic. Bolts of crackling light shot from the diary, slamming into the wooden beams and shaking the very foundation of the house. Gloria stumbled back, shielding her face as the attic groaned, the walls pulsating as if the house itself were alive. Then, a scream, low and guttural, full of rage and loss, a scream that was not human. And just as suddenly as it began, everything stilled. The diary dropped to the floor with a final thud, its edges slightly singed. The attic fell silent, the air refreshed into somewhat normalcy. Gloria hesitated before stepping forward. The diary lay motionless, its pages now eerily still. A single final entry had appeared. March 21st, 2025. She is gone. My Colette has left me. I am nothing without her. Oh, Colette. I am so sorry. I loved you so. I waited. You never came. I am no more, finally, released from my agony. Then, without warning, the diary slammed shut. Gloria's breath caught. Where is Sarah? Please, give me my sister back, she cried, voice breaking. A soft thud echoed from downstairs. Heart pounding, Gloria bolted down the steps. And there, lying in the center of the living room, was Sarah. Dazed, shaken, a little battered, but very much alive. Sarah blinked at her, disoriented. Gloria? Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. You're here. What happened? Tears blurred Gloria's vision as she rushed forward, pulling her sister into a fierce hug. Oh, Sarah, you're home. Sarah shuddered against her. I saw him. Roderick. He was a monster, Gloria. Twisted by rage. He was searching for Colette, furious that she had betrayed him, that she had moved on, married someone else. Gloria cupped Sarah's face, her thumbs brushing against her cheeks, wiping the tears. You're safe now. It's over. Sarah's gaze flickered toward the attic door. Her voice was quieter now, wary. Is it? Gloria took a slow breath. I think he finally found peace. After all these years, He was released from his pain. Sarah nodded, but unease lingered in her expression. Then let's make sure no one ever opens that diary again, Gloria agreed. And without hesitation, they climbed back up to the attic, grabbing the diary. Then, under the moon's watchful glow, they carried it out back, straight to the fire pit. As the flames consumed the aged leather and time-worn pages, an unnatural wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the last echoes of Roderick Shadowthorn of Moonvale Hollow. And for the first time in 70 years, Moonvale Hollow would be forgotten forever, or so they hoped. And the next story will be told right away. Please listen carefully. Cotuit Circle. Let's keep pretending. I whispered those 3 words with a slight slur. The buzz of 2 champagne cocktails still churning through my veins. The air was thick with that sleepy summertime vibe. Bugs buzzing and crickets chirping their seasonal symphony. I tucked a copper-colored curl behind my ear and squeezed Nick's hand tighter as we strolled through the canopied streets, the golden sunlight still warm on our shoulders. At dinner, we had joked about being rich retirees, just stopping for a quick bite before returning to our yacht for a summer soiree. Sweetheart, you can be whoever you want to be, Nick grinned, slowing down his lanky stride to steady my swaying steps. In fact, I have a surprise for you. Follow me. We interlaced our fingers and ascended the hill towards Cotuit Circle. Backed by a ridge of evergreen, the house stood out amongst the newly renovated mansions, its creamy white woodwork and deep sage trim, a charming reflection of timeless architecture. Despite being worn and weathered, the house seemed to boast of its own importance, like a royal battleship returning from war. The setting sunlight sparkled off the towering, tapered windows that flanked each side of the entryway. Fragrant honeysuckle climbed the porch railings in intricate swirls, weaving in, out, and around each delicately carved post. I ran my fingers along the smooth address welded into the bars of the gate. 3, 5, 4. Cotuit Circle. Ka-tuet. I love saying those words, I murmured to myself. Click. Nick opened the gate with a grand flourish. Today, on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, we are touring Gemma Grant's opulent Cotuit Circle home. Champagne wishes and caviar dreams and all that jazz. Nicholas, whose house is this? I fixed a broken pipe here last week. The old lady is gone for the summer. Stop stressing. It's fine. I hesitated. Nick tilted his head in a knowing glance that wordlessly implied, trust me. I exhaled deeply to calm my nerves and stretched my arms overhead. Shit. Ow! I moaned as my thumb caught on a thorn from the crimson, rose-lined trellis. A tiny trickle of red snaked down my wrist. I pressed my thumb to my lips and rolled my eyes. I'm fine, I murmured. Nick kissed my hand and guided me through the gate to the front door. He entered the same code into the panel above the door handle, and it creaked open. The essence of the interior washed over me. A stale bouquet of black tea, sugared orange cookies, dried lavender, and my grandmother's mille fleurs perfume. My throat burned. I steadied myself against the velvet damask-covered wall and struggled to appear composed. "Do you smell that?" I whispered. "Old lady perfume and dust?" "Yeah, a little. We can leave if you're nervous, but I swear no one is here." I shook my head and hurriedly wiped my watery eyes. "No, show me around," I managed to utter. The house oozed opulence. Thick ruby-red rugs with dizzying geometric patterns covered the chestnut wood floors. Centered in the middle of the entryway was a grand staircase that spiraled up to the second-story landing. Ornate sconces and buttery yellow candles marked the walls. I ran my hand along the carved banister and watched the closing streaks of golden sunlight glitter down through the narrow windows. The central parlor overflowed with collectibles, built-in bookcases full of gold leaf books, decorative lamps, and miniature figurines. Shadows danced along the walls in a forlorn choreography. But despite the soaring high ceilings, the interior appeared to be suffocating itself. There was no room to breathe. "Jem, look, your favorite." Nick appeared completely unaware of the existential crisis brewing inside me as he placed the needle on a vintage Victrola and sauntered toward me. Billie Holiday's voice filled the room. "I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places." I wrapped my arms around Nick's neck, laid my head on his chest, and tried to ignore my rising apprehension. Tick, tick, tick. The second hand on the grandfather clock marked the rhythm of our movement. "I am so pleased you've arrived," a voice rang out as the record player screeched to a stop. I froze. The known voice resonated deep within me. A gaunt, withered hand delicately placed the record needle to the side. The woman's frail body was stooped over like a wilting blossom. Spotted skin stretched tightly over her bones like sheer sheets of tissue paper. "Mrs. Danforth, I am so sorry. My wife has always wanted to tour one of the Cotuit Circle homes, and I knew she'd especially love to see yours. We didn't mean to intrude. We're going." Nick spoke hurriedly, with his head bowed down. "Nonsense, Nicholas. What a jest. You certainly know I was expecting you both. I'll make us some tea." Her voice clanged out like crystal, delicate and precise, inconsistent with her shriveled appearance. I watched her curved form stagger toward the kitchen door and felt like I was grasping at the last shreds of a dream that would soon be forgotten. I didn't know her, or did I? I began to mouth, "What the—" to Nick, as he grabbed my hand and led me toward the door. The hearty voice resonated from deep within the kitchen. "Nicholas, can you see to the water faucet in the powder room again? It's no longer leaking, but I cannot seem to get the water hot." Nick shrugged and dropped my hand. "She's old and confused. Have a cup of tea and we'll go. It'll only take me a few minutes to fix the water." "Do not leave me alone with her." I shut my eyes and begged. When I opened them, he was already gone. The tea kettle released a shrill squeal, and seconds later, she shuffled out. A stack of cookies and 2 porcelain cups of tea sloshing over on a delicate tray. "Take a seat, love," she said sweetly, as she set the tray on the table and shakily handed me a cup. I positioned myself on the edge of the velvet amethyst couch and ran my finger along the sage ivy swirls of the teacup. I watched the steam rise, desperate to avoid eye contact. "Oh dear, looks like the roses snagged you too," she observed as she held her hand next to mine. Along her thumb was a shiny white scar, identical to the thin red cut on mine. I winced. "Please have a cookie. They are delightful with this tea." I picked up the iced orange cookie and inhaled deeply. I love orange cookies. "I know, it's your favorite recipe," she replied. A trickle of sweat ran down the back of my neck. This old lady was definitely unhinged. "Thank you for your kindness, but we should be leaving. It's getting late." I glanced at the clock once more. The second hand appeared frozen in time. "Oh, shush. The night is young." I even pulled some books off the shelf this morning to show you. I wondered if she would find it rude if I pulled out my phone and texted Nick to hurry the hell up. She slid a stack of leather-bound books across the table and slinked so close to me that our knees touched. The proximity of her presence made me uneasy. I set the teacup and cookie back on the tray, picked up the top book, and crossed my legs away from her. "So, Mrs. Danforth, what do you read?" "Words, words, words," she smirked. I raised my eyebrows to acknowledge her reference. My mind flooded with long-forgotten quotes. "There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." I opened the book. "Oh, this is a photo album. Is this you and your family?" My shoulders relaxed as I slowly turned the pages. The photos all had the same muted rust color that designated the passage of time. The images captured a variety of milestones: lake vacations, ski trips, vintage cars, graduations, and birthday parties. Smiling, happy people. "Yes, dear. Long before I lived here on Cotuit Circle. Ka-tu-et. I love saying those words," she mused. Her unnerving remark made me shiver. I set the album on the table and stood to find Nick, but something caught my eye. The album opened to an entire page of a little girl in lavender-striped pajamas, copper-colored curls. I leaned down and flipped the pages faster and faster. The little girl appeared everywhere. Her first day of school, the day she got her ears pierced, the time she fell out of a tree and fractured her wrist. The little girl was me. The saccharine voice soured into a hoarse whisper. Let's keep pretending. Just when you think all the weird stuff has been told, the next story will make you think again. I've said too much. I noticed him the first time at the coffee shop on 3rd Street. He sat 2 tables over, stirring a cup of tea he never drank. He wasn't looking at me, not directly, but there was something in the way his head tilted, the way his eyes flickered over the rim of his cup, that made me feel observed. Every so often, he would blow on his mug, and eventually, this act became unsettling, as I knew the tea must have grown cold in the hour he sat unmoving. This man was dressed neatly, a stark contrast to myself, in a worn sweatshirt and messy bun that couldn't contain my red hair. He wore an ironed shirt, pressed pants, and his copper hair was immaculately combed and styled. He was remarkable because he simply did not belong. A bustling place with people moving in and out as he sat stoically with his tea. The second time was at the bookstore downtown. I was running my fingers along the shelves, searching for something to pull me in. Recently, I've been drawn to the paranormal and had moved into horror. It was terrifying, yet intriguing, as I began to imagine all there is out there that is unknown. As I perused the back of the latest Awad novel, I saw him standing in the philosophy aisle to my right. He wasn't reading, just tracing the spine of a book with one long finger. When I walked past, he looked up. Not your usual genre, he said, nodding toward the horror novel in my hands. I frowned. Excuse me? He tilted his head. You usually read literary fiction, something with layered metaphors, quiet heartbreak. A shiver danced down my spine. How would you know that? He didn't answer. Instead, he closed the book he had been holding and walked away, disappearing behind the towering shelves before I could press further. As I followed him, his pace quickened, dressed in seemingly the exact same clothes as days before, with a steady, strong step. I could not place him, though it felt like I knew him from somewhere. In my haste, without noticing, I had run into a display. As the books scattered to the floor, I muttered apologies to the staff member who ran over. I quickly looked up, and he was gone. By the 3rd time, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. I was at the park, spring in the air, though Lake Michigan was still hedged in ice dunes, which rose and fell in the evening light, my breath curling in front of me in soft clouds. He was sitting on a bench, his posture relaxed, hands resting in his lap. Unlike before, he didn't pretend not to notice me. I noticed he wore a scarf. A scarf, I swear, was my own. I had lost it many years ago. in grade school and was scolded for my carelessness. It couldn't be, I thought, as I approached closer. His gaze lifted as I approached, as if he had been waiting. "You always take this route home." I stopped in my tracks. "What?" He smiled, but it wasn't a casual, friendly expression. It was something else, something knowing. "The same path, every evening. You like the way the light hits the water at this hour." My pulse quickened. "Are you following me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured to the lake. There's something peaceful about watching things move where they aren't meant to be. The way ripples distort reflections. Everything familiar becomes something else. I crossed my arms. "That doesn't answer my question." He exhaled, running a hand through his auburn hair. "No, I suppose it doesn't." My skin prickled. "Who are you?" For a moment, I thought he might tell me. He parted his lips, as if considering it. His gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that sent a strange, twisting sensation through my stomach. But then, just as quickly, something shifted. His face, his expression. It was like watching a shadow pass over the sun. "I've said too much," he murmured, more to himself than to me. He stood, brushing invisible dust from his coat. "Forget this conversation." My heart pounded. "Forget it?" He nodded, his voice quiet. "It's better that way." And then he turned, walking away with an unsettling hum. I wanted to call out, to demand answers, but my throat tightened. I could only watch as he disappeared into the trees on the shoreline, his silhouette dissolving in the twilight. It wasn't until I turned back toward the path, heart hammering, that I realized something strange. There were no footprints where he had been standing, and the air where he had spoken still carried the scent of something I couldn't quite name. Something like old paper, burnt cedar, and a storm about to break. I don't remember deciding to come here. One moment, I was standing in the park. The next, the ice stretched before me, endless and waiting. I had begun to question whether I was losing my grip on reality. The strange man's cryptic words, the shifting moments in time, and the absence of solid ground beneath my feet had all led me to this moment, standing on the frozen shore of Lake Michigan. The ice cracked beneath my boots, protesting against the weight of yet another cold season. The lake stretched out before me, an endless horizon of white and blue that should have felt serene, but instead left me with an unsettling feeling, like something was wrong, something lurking just out of sight. I walked carefully, mindful of the shifting terrain beneath me. The lake was beautiful, but treacherous. Mounds of frozen sand rose in strange, wind-carved shapes, dusted with snow. The ice here was patchy, some parts solid, some beginning to crack and leak dark pools of water beneath. There was something about this place that made my stomach turn. Something about the way the lake seemed to pulse under my feet. It felt alive, watching me, waiting. The icy wind bit at my skin, and my breath curled in the air in front of me in wisps of smoke. I knelt by a pool of dark water that had opened beneath the ice, watching as minnows darted below, their silver bodies flashing like tiny ghosts in the clear, cold depths. The clarity of the water made my pulse quicken. Too easy to see the darkness below. Too easy to imagine the lake's cold hunger. Then, something caught my eye, a darker patch of ice than the others. An odd shape trapped beneath the surface. I moved closer, my boots skidding slightly on the slick ground. The ice here was different, smoother, clearer, almost like glass. And underneath it, something unnatural. A smear of color, a reddish-orange streak that seemed impossibly bright against the deep blue-black of the water. My heart lurched. I knelt down, tapping gently at the ice with the toe of my boot, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The shape underneath wavered, but it didn't move. I pressed harder, cracking the ice, and then, as though the surface were giving up its secret, the water pooled, revealing what had been hidden beneath. Hair, long and dark, flowing like seaweed with the current. A face, pale and lifeless, staring upward, eyes wide and empty. My breath caught. A sharp, cold terror raced through my veins. I stumbled back, my heart hammering in my chest, but I couldn't look away. The wind howled, and the ice beneath me groaned, shifting uneasily. And then realization struck like a physical blow. The woman under the ice, frozen, lifeless, was me. A strangled sound left my throat. My mind recoiled, trying to reject what I was seeing. But there was no denying it. It was my own face staring back at me, my own vacant, sightless eyes, trapped beneath the ice. A whisper cut through the howling wind. "Do you understand now?" I turned sharply. The man was there, standing just a few feet behind me, as if he had always been. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes, an ancient sorrow, a knowing, made my stomach churn. "You weren't meant to find this," he said quietly, his gaze flickering to the ice, to the frozen image of me. I shook my head, my pulse pounding in my ears. "What is this? Why is she? Why am I?" "You've been lost," he said softly. "Lost in time, lost in memory. The past and future bleed together. You are the woman under the ice, and yet you're still here, trying to find your way." A deep, pulsing ache settled in my chest. My breath came in short, shallow bursts. I wanted to reject his words, to turn and run, but something about them rang true, in a way I couldn't explain. I opened my mouth to speak, but something flickered in my peripheral vision. Movement in the ice. I turned sharply, expecting to see the body beneath me shift. But what I saw instead made my blood run cold. Reflections. Not just one, but many, scattered across the ice in broken, distorted fragments. My face, but not as it was now. Older, younger, crying, laughing, standing somewhere else entirely, flickering like a glitch in time. 100 versions of me trapped beneath the surface, shifting and blending like ripples in the water. One version of me didn't flicker and vanish like the others. She was staring back, her mouth moving soundlessly, like she was trying to warn me. My hands trembled. "This isn't real," the man sighed, as if he had been expecting this reaction. "What is real?" he murmured. "Is time so linear, Alex? Can you really be sure you're still the same person you think you are? Or have you already crossed over?" My pulse slammed against my ribs. I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong. But something inside me knew he wasn't. The lake groaned beneath me, the ice fracturing in slow, creeping lines. The world tilted, unsteady, and for a moment, I felt as though I was slipping between the cracks, the space between past and future collapsing around me. I turned back to the man, searching his face for some kind of anchor, some kind of answer. "What do I do?" I whispered. His eyes were solemn, unwavering. "You come with me. There's only one way to move forward." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. I hesitated, my gaze flickering once more to the frozen version of myself beneath the ice. A life lost, a path already taken. But if I stepped away, if I turned back now, would I ever get another chance to change it? I swallowed hard. My fingers curled into fists at my sides. And then I nodded. The man held out his hand, and I took it. The above story has ended. Let's listen to the next story. Lucien in the Sky with Diamonds. I really should have realized how vindictive Heather could be. What is that saying? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. When she found out I was seeing someone else and had traded her in for the other woman, a younger, prettier model, I just know that it was that very moment that she decided to exact her revenge. Unfortunately, Heather knows all of my secrets, including the biggest one of all. The fact that I am a world-renowned jewel thief who has recently completed one of the largest heists of the century. The theft of the Weatherby diamonds. Yes, I stole the necklace quite smoothly and easily from its display case at the art museum. I won't go into all of the meticulous details of how I managed to pull off the job. Let's just say that I know exactly what I'm doing, and I plan everything to the nth degree. All of my operations normally run like a well-oiled machine. That is, if no one interferes with my flow. But no, Heather just had to throw a monkey wrench into my work. I have to take ownership of it, however. It was entirely my own fault. I got careless for a brief moment and let my guard down. One night, when I was feeling quite loose and relaxed, admittedly, I had also drunk too much wine. I had bragged to her of my prowess as a jewel thief. I probably also promised her the moon and stars at the time. Later, of course, when I dumped her, she used that information to cook my goose. I just know that she squealed on me and is responsible for my current predicament. I am now on an Air France flight, ready to depart to my native Paris, sweating like a pig because I'm afraid that I've been spotted by the cops. I just know that it's Heather who told. Why else would I be targeted this way? I have always been one to remain incognito, to fly under the radar, so to speak. Thus, the only logical conclusion I can arrive at is that she is the one who turned me in. Now the cops are surely out to get me. They are at this very moment rapidly approaching my seat. The Weatherby diamonds are set with precision into a choker valued at several $1,000,000. A choker that I am now wearing as I sit here prepared for takeoff. The necklace is currently living up to its name. It is choking me under a somewhat baggy black turtleneck. I despise turtlenecks, hate the way they press up against your neck. I opted for the loosest turtleneck possible, but it still presses up uncomfortably against my neck. The combination of the choker necklace and the turtleneck are almost more than I can bear. I wear the turtleneck under an equally baggy hoodie so no one can spot the necklace. Normally, I prefer my clothes to conform to my trim body like a glove. My sartorial senses are offended by this sloppy but choking attire. Who would ever wear a turtleneck with a hoodie? Unfortunately, I really have no choice. My outfit was not chosen for fashion. It does, however, allow me to sail through airport security without being stopped. The plan is, once I land in Paris, I will meet with a high-end jewelry broker who will give me top dollar for the jewels. I will be Hashon for life. That is, if I get away with it. I am afraid that the police are right now, at this very moment, making their way to the back of the plane where I am sitting. My seat on the jumbo jet, like my clothes, has also been carefully selected. I am in the second to last row and am seated on the aisle. I chose this seat so that I can make a quick exit to the restroom if needed and dump the jewels somewhere in the tiny closet of the restroom. We haven't taken off yet, and the flight attendant has just made the standard announcement about how we need to remain seated with our seat belts on and our trays in the upright position. Right after she says that, I spot the blue uniformed policeman making his way back towards me. With no time to waste, I disregard the stewardess's explicit directions and quickly shove my tray to the upright position. I then dash inside the tiny cubicle of a restroom before anyone can stop me. I shut the door firmly and pull the lever to lock the door. I really need to find a hiding spot for the necklace. I can't afford to be caught with it. I don't want to flush it down the toilet. I would be, in effect, flushing all of my hopes and dreams away. Instead, I need to stash the necklace somewhere so I can somehow later retrieve it. I quickly pull my hoodie off, followed by my turtleneck. With fumbling fingers, I fiddle with the silver clasp until the necklace falls off into my hands. Next, I carefully place the necklace in the paper towel dispenser behind the wad of folded paper towels. As I do this, my heart racing, I hear a sharp knock on the plasticine door that folds in like an accordion. "Monsieur?" the flight attendant inquires. She swiftly changes to English, but speaks with a strong French accent. "The plane is ready for takeoff. We need you to return to your seat now and put your seatbelt on, please," she says in a firm but polite voice. "Pardon, mademoiselle. I really need to use the facilities. I will be out directly." I run the water in the sink to make my act convincing and hurriedly wipe my hands with just one paper towel, taking care not to use too many so that the necklace remains hidden in the dispenser. I drop the used paper towel in the wastebasket and then don my turtleneck and hoodie once again. With 2 layers on in the tiny, airless washroom, I am now sweating more than ever. No matter, I tell myself, taking a deep breath in an effort to remain cool. At least, I am no longer choking. My throat feels slightly better, although the turtleneck still irritates me. I quickly push open the door and return to my aisle seat, where I dutifully pull my seatbelt across my lap and try to appear cool and collected. The policeman approaches me, his shiny badge glinting in the morning sun streaming through the small windows. "Mr. Martin?" He pronounces Martin in the American way, rather than the way I prefer it. Martine. My passport says I am Lucien Martin, although it is not my real name. My passport, which is fake, says I am a French citizen. When in America, however, I have a California driver's license that proclaims me to be Luke Martin. I have deliberately chosen a name that is very common, both in French and English. In every aspect of my life, I need to blend in and remain unmemorable. "Yes," I answer politely. "Please stand up. We need to do a pat search on you." "Pat search?" I repeat indignantly. "What are you looking for?" I am not at liberty to say, but with the Patriot Act, we have the right to search any and all air passengers at will. The cop says firmly. "Patriot Act? Do you think I am a terrorist?" I say this quite loudly. I hear a collective gasp from my fellow passengers, who are understandably alarmed, hearing nothing other than the word terrorist. "I sincerely hope not, sir," the cop said smoothly. "Just doing my job." I let out a tremendous sigh. "Go ahead. Do your job. Pat away." The cop uses bladed hands to do a thorough pat search, running his hands smoothly up and down my sides. He searches my pant pockets and instructs me to remove my hoodie. I do so, laughing inside. I didn't want to wear the hoodie anyways. After several long minutes, the cop finally stops his fruitless search, finding nothing. "Okay, sir," he says finally. "You have been cleared." He walks to the front of the plane, where he presumably has to talk to the captain. "This plane is cleared for takeoff," he announces to the male attendant standing at the front of the plane. As he does that, I glance towards the back of the plane to see the reaction from the other flight attendant, the lady who had tried to shoo me out of the washroom. To my surprise, she quickly enters the washroom and pulls the door firmly shut behind her. My heart sinks. My plan had been to quickly visit the head once again and retrieve the jewels before anyone else entered. I haven't seen anyone else, apart from the stewardess, use the restroom. I have been carefully watching, in between dealing with the nosy policeman. Now, I pray it isn't too late. Several long moments pass, and the flight attendant finally exits the restroom. I quickly unbuckle my seatbelt and hurry back there. I frantically pull the door shut behind me and shove my hand into the narrow slot of the paper towel dispenser. I feel around with my fingers, my heart sinking. The necklace is gone. With shaking hands and fury coursing through my veins, I return to my seat. As I do so, I catch sight of the petite, blonde flight attendant who had entered the washroom before me. She gives me a Mona Lisa smile and tells me once again that I need to buckle my seatbelt and prepare for takeoff. I smile back and raise my eyebrows at her flirtatiously. "Certainly, mademoiselle. I'll buckle up right away. I can hardly wait to get to Paris." "But of course," she responds in her charming French accent. "Paris is the city of light." I vow to myself that once I reach Paris, I will tail the flight attendant and somehow try to overpower her, either by brute force or with my relentless charm. A gentleman jewel thief's job is never done, I tell myself. I need to retrieve the diamonds at all costs. They are my ticket to the good life. The plane's engine roars as if feels my strong determination. The giant silver bird speeds down the runway and triumphantly takes to the sky. At last, the blonde flight attendant moves down the plane's narrow aisle. She turns her head back towards me at the last moment and smiles mischievously. Mona Lisa no longer. "I hope you enjoy your flight, monsieur. Bon voyage." The next story will begin now. Little Men, January 1985. Somewhere over the You were 1,000 miles into the Atlantic when the aircraft rutted violently against your controls. Barely a shiver in the airframe at first, like a deep sigh running through the metal bones of the 777, then unloading at once. You felt it beneath your hands, fingers curled around the yoke, a pulse of tension radiating from your own chest. And you thought that perhaps the bottom of the ocean was where you belonged. There was a darkness there, a pressure so strong it would stop your body from behaving like a biological machine and turn it into a mangled physics experiment. The same coexisted inside you, where your heart was splintered, half of it belonging to your mother and half of it to Cammy. A darkness you couldn't smooth away. Somewhere back there, among the rows of passengers dozing, sighing, and flipping through their lives, he was sitting. Your father, a man you'd never truly seen. Not beyond the stories your mother whispered in moments of quiet fury. A man who had given you nothing but a sickness that curled in your gut when you remembered where you came from. The man whose rage marked you. You didn't know his seat number, didn't want to know. The knowledge that he existed in your cabin, breathing your air, was enough to make a grown man sick. And you thought you knew that if he walked up to the cockpit door, if he knocked, if he leaned in with some pathetic excuse or a father's smirk, you would open the door and wrap your hands around his throat. You'd feel his pulse flutter against your fingers, fragile and real, and you would squeeze. You let autopilot hold the course. Let the gentle hum of the engines seep into your bones, pretending for a moment you were something better than what he left behind. A clean slate, but there was always a stain, that borrowed darkness, his gift to you. No matter how high you flew, you couldn't outrun it. And then she drifted into your mind, the girl with eyes like sky break, a voice like gentle rain, the girl you had never touched, could never touch, because she was flawless in ways you would never be. She'd smile at you with that easy grace, unaware of the shadows clawing inside you, oblivious to the storm you kept locked behind your ribs. You thought of her seeing you for what you were, the quiet, steady pilot with a monster curled around his heart. If she knew, if she saw even a hint of that darkness, she would recoil. She'd wish you out of the sky, wish your plane would disappear into the ocean without a trace. And maybe she'd be right. The horizon stretched before you, a line you couldn't cross, a future you didn't deserve. You swallowed the air in shallow breaths, felt the press of your father's existence. Outside, the clouds thickened, gray swirling into black, and the gentle tremor of turbulence returned. The seatbelt sign blinked on. You flicked the intercom switch, cleared your throat. Ladies and gentlemen, we're passing through some rough air. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Your father's life was in your hands. All their lives were. You looked at the yoke, the screens, the clouds ahead, and wondered just how far you could fall before the darkness took over. Why was he still alive? How did he deserve to be alive? On what grounds exactly? You could push the controls forward, put the nose into a dive, select full thrust, increase bank angle to 45 degrees, and stall the plane. Keep putting in fatal commands while your FO tries to right the plane until the dual input sound warning starts to ring out through the cockpit. You squeezed your eyes shut just for a moment. The stick trembled beneath your fingers, the aircraft groaning. You loved this plane, and like in any other reciprocal relationship, it not only loved you back, but supported your every decision. You could do it. A simple motion, a nudge of the yoke, the push of a throttle, and gravity would take over. You opened your eyes. Outside, the storm coiled tighter, wind shear slipping along the fuselage. The intercom crackled as your first officer, blissfully unaware of the war inside you, mumbled something about altitude adjustments. You barely heard him. A breath, another. Then the master caution blared. A harsh, shrieking thing. Your FO jerked upright. Jesus, what? Your hands moved, instincts taking over before your mind could finish what it started. The turbulence sharpened. Wind punched the aircraft broadside. The nose dipped. Pitch up, pitch up, you corrected without thinking. Muscle memory overriding the dark pull at the edge of your mind. The aircraft stabilized, shuddering in the air, and for a moment, all was still. Your FO exhaled, dragging a hand down his face. That was a bad one. You okay? You nodded, throat dry. Yeah, you said, because it wasn't your hands that tried to kill them. It was the storm. At least, that was the lie you would tell yourself. Something in you had hesitated, had listened to the alarms, had heard the raw panic in your FO's voice, had responded like the pilot they had trained you to be. Why had you stopped? Captain, you forced your expression into something normal, professional. The storm was beginning to ease, the worst of it passing. We'll be clear in a few minutes, you said. Keep an eye on the readings. He nodded, rubbing his temples. Didn't think we'd get rocked that hard. Thought for a second we were gonna. He shook his head. Never mind. You didn't respond. Instead, you reached for the intercom. Your voice was calm, steady. Everything it should be. Ladies and gentlemen, the turbulence is subsiding. We'll have a smooth ride the rest of the way. Thank you for your patience. You let go of the button. The lie sat heavy in your mouth because the storm wasn't over. It had only just begun. We think it's over, but in fact, it's just begun. The next story will thrill you in a completely different way. The Seeds of Dominion. 1. I always knew the world was constructed on lies. Not minor falsehoods or innocent misunderstandings, but carefully cultivated fabrications designed to shape reality. From my earliest memories, even before my parents disappeared, I sensed that truth was not something freely given. It was deliberately hidden, erased, and rewritten. My parents were among the first to resist. They stood against the Dominion when resistance still felt possible, believing knowledge was a right worth risking everything to protect. They vanished when I was 6, quietly removed by the regime, their identities reduced to whispers and fading memories. Ronan and Elise Marek, old friends of my parents and former resistance fighters themselves, took me in. They taught me how to navigate the unseen currents beneath the surface, how to decode the hidden language of control the Dominion embedded in every broadcast and headline. They showed me the creeping corporate feudalism that had slowly replaced democracy as powerful corporations silently took ownership of entire districts, deciding who prospered and who disappeared. By 16, I was adept at uncovering secrets. I immersed myself in encrypted data streams and forgotten archives. Ronan and Elise warned me. Knowing too much was dangerous, but ignorance was deadly. The Dominion thrived because people feared the truth. They accepted convenience over freedom. My decision to become a journalist was calculated. It allowed me to move unnoticed, to gather information without drawing suspicion. Yet deep down, I knew this was more than a career. It was a weapon against tyranny. Truth was powerful, but proof was lethal. 2. You ever feel like you're chasing ghosts, Joran? I glanced up from my tablet, where Dominion data feeds ran endlessly, searching for cracks in their carefully constructed narratives. Devin Rains, my closest friend since our academy days, watched me from across the cafe table, worry shadowing his face. We chase ghosts because they're the only thing the Dominion fears, I replied evenly. Devin's discomfort was palpable, a subtle anxiety coloring every gesture. Recently, he'd changed. He'd grown cautious, hesitant. The war's been over for years, Devin said softly. Maybe they won because no one noticed until it was too late. Now, all we're doing is marking ourselves as targets. His words unsettled me, not for their truth, but because they were spoken from fear. Devin's courage had once matched mine, his idealism unwavering. Something had shifted. What's changed, Devin? I leaned forward, lowering my voice instinctively. Surveillance was everywhere, hidden in plain sight. He hesitated, eyes flicking nervously to the security camera mounted near the ceiling. There's a new list, he whispered. It's not for criminals or dissidents. It's for people who question too much It's called the inquiry list. I understood immediately. A blacklist was straightforward. Immediate punishment or exile. The inquiry list was something darker, insidious. It marked you for isolation, slow erosion, and eventual disappearance. You're on it, I stated flatly, watching him closely. He nodded slowly. We both are. A silent understanding passed between us. Devon was frightened, and fear made people dangerous. Still, I wasn't about to stop. Not now, when the stakes had finally become clear. 3. Devon disappeared within days. His presence simply ceased. No messages, no records, no traces. Just silence. I pursued answers with relentless determination, hacking into secured archives, whispering in underground circles, piecing together fragments of his fate. Each revelation deepened my dread. The Dominion Protocol wasn't coming. It had arrived. Our world was now governed by rigid conformity, loyalty, measured in unquestioning obedience. Citizens weren't people. They were assets, evaluated for their utility, discarded when inconvenient. I stared numbly at the evidence on my tablet. Democracy hadn't merely been undermined, it had been methodically dismantled. Devon wasn't dead, not physically. He had been absorbed, transformed into something compliant and controlled. 4. I knew when they would come. Patterns were easy to spot if you paid attention. Increased drone patrols, subtle shifts in daily broadcasts, neighbors becoming suddenly distant. It was all carefully staged. When the knock finally came, I was already on the move. Out through the fire escape, down silent alleyways, navigating shadows with practiced ease. My heart pounded, but my breathing remained steady. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. The train station loomed ahead, my gateway to the industrial underground. Passengers waited silently, their faces blank, eyes fixed firmly forward. I slipped onto the platform just as Dominion enforcers emerged, their armored presence imposing and inevitable. Joran Vale, the voice sent a chill down my spine. Not the enforcer's voice, but Devon's. I turned slowly, dread twisting inside me. Devon stood among them, dressed in Dominion black, his eyes hollow and distant. I recognized the vacancy instantly. The Dominion had taken not only his freedom, but his spirit. Come quietly, he intoned, emotionless. You gave in, I accused bitterly. They made you afraid, and you surrendered. I adapted, he replied mechanically. No, I said sharply. Adaptation isn't compliance. His gaze faltered. Something brief and vulnerable flickering behind those empty eyes. Devon reached toward me, an automated reflex of the Dominion's control. The train doors hissed open beside me, a brief window of opportunity. Devon lunged, grabbing my shoulder. Instinct took over. I drove my elbow hard into his ribs, feeling him recoil sharply, gasping for breath. His grip loosened, and I wrenched free, leaping onto the train just as the doors snapped shut behind me. Through the window, Devon stared helplessly, now a shadow fading into the distance. Regret etched his features briefly before the darkness reclaimed him. The train surged forward, carrying me into uncertainty, but also toward freedom. 5. As the city lights blurred into a mosaic of neon and shadow, I steadied my breathing. The train hummed rhythmically beneath my feet, a steady reassurance that, for now, I was still free. Passengers around me stared blankly ahead, eyes purposely unfocused, trained to remain ignorant of anything that might threaten their carefully curated peace. But I was awake. The Dominion thrived on the apathy of the masses, believing control was absolute because compliance was easy. Yet beneath that facade lay a deep-seated fear of truth, a fragile illusion ready to shatter. I had lost Devon, just as I'd lost my parents. Each loss carved itself into my being. Painful reminders that truth always came at a cost. But their sacrifices were not in vain. They'd ignited a flame in me, nurtured by Ronan and Elise, a flame of resistance, a commitment to remember, to speak, and to expose the lies. The Dominion underestimated the strength of those who remembered, those who chose truth over comfort. They believed themselves untouchable, their rule eternal. But power built upon lies was fundamentally unstable, vulnerable to those willing to risk everything for the truth. As the train raced deeper into the industrial outskirts, darkness settled around me, punctuated only by flickering lights and distant shadows. I pressed my forehead gently against the cold window, eyes scanning the landscape rushing past. Factories loomed on the horizon, silent giants standing guard over secrets yet undiscovered. My heart steadied, determination hardening like tempered steel. They might hunt me, silence me, or erase my name from history, but they couldn't erase the truth. Not while people like me still breathed. The Dominion hadn't won, not yet, on a parallel track, unnoticed. Another train moved quietly through the shadows. Inside, illuminated by the pale glow of a screen, a figure stared intently at my image, captured by surveillance cameras. Eyes narrowed thoughtfully, studying every detail of my escape, every gesture, every defiance. From the tinted window of his train car, Devon watched the darkness unfold, shadows reflecting in his eyes no longer hollow, but haunted by the flicker of something forgotten. He whispered softly to himself, a truth long buried, but impossible to erase. The truth is not a ghost, it is a weapon. And outside, the city faded slowly into darkness. The above story ends, but never stops. Here is another story that will not disappoint you. The mysterious painting. After pushing back from its gate, the Swiss Air midday flight to New York moved slowly through a light snow flurry to its designated runway. The first-class cabin was less than half full. The passenger in 1A was pleased there was no one opposite. A smiling cabin crew offered him a glass of champagne. He declined, asking for double single malt. He thought about the voicemail, a somewhat guarded call, coming from someone he hadn't spoken to in 15 years. What drove his final response was the email attachment that followed. He'd tried retuning the call, but it went to voicemail. He sensed something was wrong. He'd barely had time to return to his apartment from where he'd been staying, find his passport, pack a new bag, and take his car service to the airport. Something was telling him missing the flight was not an option. Philippe Abano was an internationally recognized art specialist, having spent 35 years researching the French Impressionists, a group of artists whose collective works, long after their passing, at auction, would shake the art world to its foundations. As with many famous artists, there were finished canvases, although documented, which had never been located. The Nazi art plunder, which began in Germany in 1933, contributed to the loss of artworks across Europe. The French Impressionists were not exempt from this pillage. 48 hours previous, Marie Le Pen was an art restorer. She worked almost exclusively for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, specializing in the restoration of damaged watercolors. On occasion, she did private restoration. With the museum's knowledge, she'd taken a call from a person representing a Mr. Retzlaff, saying she'd been recommended by her superior at the museum as someone to inspect a damaged watercolor he possessed. Marie, who loved her work, agreed to view the painting. She agreed a time the following day. Mr. Retzlaff would send a car. Very swish, she thought. After offloading her bags from the limousine sent for her, she looked around. The street was amazing. Narrow with private residences, no commercial properties. The houses all appeared to be of similar build, 5 or 6 floors above ground, with basements or walk-downs. Every property was maintained like new. Flowers and trees adorned the street. There was no garbage and no graffiti. The residence they stopped in front of was impressive, with red brick and huge floor-to-ceiling windows, edged with carved stone. At roof level, gargoyles peered down, surveying the scene. This was a part of New York most people would never see. Amazing. She followed the driver up the marble steps. He pulled on the brass handle and returned to the car. A man wearing a bow tie and black trousers answered. "Yes, madam?" he inquired. "I'm Marie Le Pen. I believe you're expecting me?" She smiled. "We are indeed, madam," the stern-faced man replied. The entrance hall was huge. She could smell timber and brass polish. The black and white, checkered, tiled floor was straight out of an English TV series. The doors leading off the foyer were all closed. A majestic, sweeping staircase held sway over the entrance. Huge brass vases, once filled with flowers, stood empty either side of the entrance. Apart from the electric light, the only modern consideration was a mechanical elevator. "Please," the man gestured, "follow me." They entered the elevator, along with her baggage. Marie watched as the man pressed 5. The door closed, and they began their ascent. On the 5th floor was another vestibule. This one had more polished timber and huge windows onto the street below. "This way." He gestured, then walked along a long corridor before he opened a large double door into what looked like a series of smaller spaces. If Marie hadn't had complete faith in her boss, she'd have been scared. At one side of the room, a man sat, straight-backed, with silver-gray hair. She guessed at least late 80s, wearing a green corduroy smoking jacket. He stood. She could smell cigar smoke. "Thank you for coming. I'm Peter Retzlaff. Fact is, Miss Le Pen, I need an expert opinion as to a certain painting that is in my possession. Should I, or should I not, restore it? Your superior at the Met spoke most highly of you." Marie saw several large art tables, specialist seats, and an array of instruments, all designed specifically for art restoration. She was gobsmacked. There had to be $1 million in equipment and instruments, brand new, some still in their original packaging, just sitting there. The old man waved his hand, and the valet unlocked a large steel cabinet with racks of what looked to Maria like canvases, painted canvases in various stages of decomposition. Strange, she thought. He slid one of the racks out and removed a painting, a watercolor that Maria recognized. After putting on her smock and gloves, examined the item more closely. Behind her, a phone rang. The valet took a cell phone from his pocket and listened, then said something softly to the old man. They steeped away to the side of the room, out of earshot. Maria continued looking at the canvas, heavily water-damaged with a once grand frame that also appeared flawed. She was about to make some preliminary notes into her phone. As she moved around the table, a splash of red caught her eye. The steel cabinet, which held the damaged painting, was open on one side. What she saw made her heart stand still. It was a large canvas of what appeared to be small wooden bridge over water in a garden. Although no expert, she'd seen enough examples of French impressionistic work to know this could be one. Marie quickly turned her phone to camera, taking 2 quick shots, only to be interrupted by raised voices. The old man was saying something to the valet in what sounded like German, who dashed past her, securing the door to the cabinet. Ending her view, she said nothing, returning to the recorder in her phone, her head down, trying to appear as though she was concentrating. The old man looked suspiciously at her, said nothing. She could feel his eyes. "My God, what have you just seen?" she asked herself. Maria spent the next 2 hours making notes and photographing the damage. She agreed to return the following day with her recommendations and estimates, should she consider it restorable. Retzlaff agreed, giving her a copy of a providence document relating to the painting, which she would need to study. He told her he would send a car for her at an agreed time. She shook his hand and returned to the waiting limousine. The previous 2 hours did not sit well with her. Quite why, she couldn't say. The images of the red canvas wouldn't leave her. The storm had hit with a vengeance. Sudden spring rain washing the roadways, reminding New Yorkers summer was not far away. The crowded eateries on the streets of the East Village were suddenly deserted, sending outside diners scrambling for shelter inside. From her small single-bed apartment off McDougal Street, above a drugstore, Maria sat looking at the 2 images she'd downloaded from her camera. The room was quiet, save for the rhythm of the rain tapping at her window. On the larger screen, she could see more clearly the image she'd snapped earlier. The images were very much French impressionistic, of the late 19th or early 20th century. She could see the attempt to produce work inspired by real life. It was revolutionary. French impressionist artists rejected classical subject matter in favor of modernity, seeking to produce works that represented their current circumstances and environments. The more she looked, the more she was convinced. It was what she suspected. "My God," she exclaimed. "Could it be a Monet, hidden in a steel cabinet in a residence on the Upper West Side?" It would explain the old man's annoyance at the cabinet being left open, particularly in the presence of a third party who just happened to be an art restoration expert. Maria took stock, pouring another glass of wine, wondering what she should do next. She thought about the man who had mentored her 15 years ago at Switzerland's largest art museum, the Kunsthaus Zurich, Philippe Abano. If anyone could make sense on what she had seen, he could. She'd not had any contact with Philippe for over a decade. Now he worked in a private capacity, advising galleries and writing books on the subject of French art, in particular, French Impressionism. His web page provided email and phone contact details. Maria thought carefully as how she should frame the call without identifying the object. Before she made the call, she uploaded the 2 photographs into a separate folder, attaching it to the email address she had for Philippe Abano. Suspecting the call would go to voicemail, she'd prepared a statement. At 10:30 p.m., she made the call, voicemail. She introduced herself, telling him of her current position at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, reminding him of their previous association. How she'd come to see what she'd seen, making no reference to a place or names, asking him for his opinion as to the images attached to the following email. Finishing the call, she pressed the send button. In the street below, a man sat in a black limousine, its wipers on intermittent sweeps, clearing the spitting rain, watching the illuminated small window above the drugstore. The Swiss Air flight gathered speed as it approached its takeoff point at Zurich Airport. Food and service trolleys rattled in their compartments as the aircraft's nose finally lifted into a gray, overcast day, the engines screaming. Philippe Abano was anxious and at the same time nervous, processing what he'd heard and seen in the previous few hours from one Maria Le Pen. Once the pilot had removed the seatbelt sign, he reached for his laptop. Putting on his glasses, began his search. East Village, New York City. Detectives Allison Maroney and her partner, Alex Sonny, stood at the open door of 1A, the apartment above the drugstore in the East Village. They flashed their shields at the uniform on the door. "What we got?" Allison inquired. The uniformed officers' badges read Lomax. "So, Officer Lomax, talk to us." The officer opened his notebook. A deceased female found dead after we gained entry, possible gunshot. A Miss Holland. He gestured upwards. In 2A, reported a cat calling and scratching at the deceased's door. Apparently, the tenant regularly let her cat out when she came home from work, and then opened up when Pussy wanted in. Except, this time, no response. Cat keeps calling. She, Miss Holland, knocked. Nothing. As she heard the tenant arrive earlier that evening, she was reluctant to use the spare key she had, deciding to call 911 instead. We attended. The cat was still scratching at the door. Miss Holland gave us the key and witnessed a non-forced entry. We discovered the body and called the station, securing the scene. The ME who arrived shortly after we called it in puts time of death at around 8 p.m., give or take. Pulling on latex gloves, Detective Maroney knelt next to the body. ID? Yes. A wallet with cash and cards. A Maria Le Pen, 37, works at the Metropolitan Museum as an art restorer. ID shows her address as here. No driver's license. Detective Sonny moved carefully around the small room. Laptop? Cell? Neither, though I'm guessing she had both. They're chargers for each in here and in the bedroom. To recap, Sonny offers. No phone, no laptop, nothing taken except said cell and computer. Not a robbery then, and no sign of a forced entry. Sonny looked at his partner skeptically, shrugging his huge shoulders. Single gunshot between the eyes, small caliber, maybe .32. Very professional. Look like a hit to me, Maroney offered. What do you think? After 3 hours of intense in-flight investigation, Philippe Abanneau concluded it was a work by Claude Monet, albeit a later work. His once subtle transitions between shades became bolder and less precise, reflecting the challenges posed by his deteriorating eyesight. Monet's health struggles extended beyond his eyes, but his vision loss had the most direct impact on his art. And it was this Philippe Abanneau recognized. He'd even found a reference to a non-catalogued work titled Pont sur l'eau bleue, Bridge over Blue Water. It was listed as one of several, being prepared by Monet's agent for exhibit in Paris. The exhibition never eventuated, the listed paintings unaccounted for. This was no great mystery for Armand. A number of explanations could be found. The artist withdrew the works, no reason given, an issue with the gallery, or sold before exhibition. The latter Armand found more convincing. It would also explain its anonymity for over a century, a private or family collection that may have suffered at the hands of the Nazi art plunder of the 30s. The whereabouts of many were still unknown. Either way, a mystery that may well be explained when he was to meet with Maria Le Pen in 4 hours' time. Thank you for being here to listen with me. Let's enjoy the new story together. Colorless Heart. Set your story in a world that has lost all color. Colorless Heart by Lucy Apatow. Marie roused from sleep in the double bed inside the Paris Hilton Hotel. She sank into the comfort of the silky sheets and the fresh fabric smell. A smile splashed across her face, unable to open her eyes just yet. Freedom at last. Just her. No one else. No jumping on eggshells. Not being caught off guard. No secrets. No lies. Just Marie. No other soul in this room. Away from him. But it wasn't only about liberation. It was about protection. Keeping her loved ones safe. She had to keep them alive. And this was the only way. Freedom for herself, but separation from her loved ones. But that one person foremost in her brain. Salvatore. Marie had recently attended a gun range and learned how to fire a gun, just in case. She never knew when she might need to use it. It was about protection. The alarm on her mobile phone jerked her fully awake. A yawn filtered through as she slowly opened her eyes and spotted her phone on the dull black bedside table that had been brown yesterday. The white cushions that had been hues of purple. The black curtains that had been taupe. The ash-black carpet beneath the bed that had been gray. And the black sky through a gap in the window curtain that had been blue. No more blue skies. No more shades other than black and white. The world had lost its color. Marie's breath quickened as her heart palpitated. She rose from bed and rubbed her eyes hard. It had to be her eyes. Had she suddenly become colorblind? Where were all the bright, vibrant colors when it was what she needed? She shut, then opened her eyes, but nothing changed. Her world was drab, colorless, soulless. Her shoulders slumped over, her head bowed. A slow chill ran up and down her spine. Curiosity peaked. Her skin reddened and turned hot. She had no choice but to be here in this colorless world. What had happened overnight to turn her entire world into a shroud of darkness with only black and white in its midst? Marie wandered outside the hotel, lost in a world where she knew no one. She had left Melbourne to make a fresh start in Paris, so nobody would find her. So he couldn't find her. She couldn't believe having woken up in Oaths, with shades of gray and black blocking her view of natural color, light, and even shades of gray. A bench with a view of the River Seine looked inviting as she made her way over, put her bag down, and stared at the calm ripples with a view of the majestic Eiffel Tower. Sailing boats anchored in the water, bunched up trees, and riders swinging their arms inside canoes. The wind scraped her face in the winter. Nothing but black and white. Marie flashed back to her former life, back home where she worked as an interior designer, married to a man she didn't love, and friends who would most likely understand her escape. Yesterday, her world was dark, but today, after she awoke, it became darker, grittier, and scarier. Did this lack of color mean something? Could she no longer design with color to refresh old homes or design new ones if she wanted to start over in France? She had not rung anyone except her best friend Helena about her sudden escape for their own protection. With a call from a burner phone, she announced her safe arrival. "Do you have color? Or has the world changed?" Helena replied. "What are you talking about? The things in the world. They're in black and white, Helena. I woke up this morning and nothing was in color. No blues, browns, pinks, purple, yellows, or any color. All gone. Is Melbourne the same? Don't be silly, Marie. We still have color. Have you become colorblind? Had your eyes checked? You couldn't have become colorblind in an instant. Go get them tested. Oh, and please stay safe. I don't know when I'll call you next. You know how he is. He could be tracking this conversation, even if it's on a burner phone. I love you, Marie. And I'm glad you're safe now. One day, we'll be together again." Marie fought back tears after ending the call. She would miss her loved ones, but she still didn't get what was going on. Was she the crazy one? Or did only Paris lose its color? With a sigh, Marie rose and made her way back to the hotel, knowing she'd have to find herself permanent residence. As she crossed the wide road, a towering man brushed her shoulder. "Oh, sorry." He locked eyes with her and walked ahead of her on the other side of the road. His broad shoulders and black eyes made her shudder, stopping in his tracks. "I have a message to give you." She angled her head. "Who are you?" "Here, take this," he said. She retrieved the note. He watched her. Who the hell was this guy? And why was he making her nervous? "Who are you?" "I'm just the messenger, lady. Read the note." "Who sent you?" He inched his way closer. Benny did. "Now read the note." "No, not again." He found her. Would this bastard ever leave her alone? With a shuddering breath, she unfolded the note, her hands shaking and the back of her neck sweating. Bits of her skin prickled. What was this? She had to be dreaming as she read the note. Her vision blurred, as if the words weren't real. The threat wasn't real. "Meet me in front of the Louvre tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, or someone you love dies." The same old threats again. How did he find me? The man bared his crooked teeth with a smile. He swaggered off into the distance. It wasn't over. It never would be. The next morning, Marie paced her steps towards the Louvre, a queue that was a mile long. She wondered if anyone would ever reach the entrance to the museum. The glass panels of the building distracted her from the enemy she was about to meet. Each step drew her closer to the devil. When would it end? Her breath hitched as she stepped on uneven ground, razor-sharp pain cutting into her lower back as she fought the gust of frozen wind. She had to free herself. But how? He would always find her, threaten her, obsess over her, and abuse her. She'd been abused for 3 torturous years. Storm clouds brewed when Marie drew closer to the swarms of people. It was almost 9 o'clock, and passers-by stared at her as if she as an alien. Was it obvious she was heading towards her death chamber, to her dreaded foe? A cold caress at the back of her neck made her freeze in her spot. She turned. It was him. Benny. In all his wealthy glamour, the bastard wore a black tie, black buttoned-up suit jacket over a black cashmere jumper with black pleated pants over Italian leather shoes. He smelled rich. "Follow me," he said, as he prodded her towards an unknown destination. They walked in silence as his intermittent glares unnerved her. The squeeze of his arm draped through hers, leaving bruises, but she said nothing. His pinch at the back of her neck made her flinch, but she said nothing. The push and pull of her hair strands made her want to cry out, but she didn't. Hidden pain to display her fake strength. When finally, she sat down outside the cafe with its outdoor setting, he ordered hot drinks and croissants. No one does what you did and gets away with it. She swallowed, her lip trembling as she stared past him. "Please don't hurt him," he chuckled and threw his head back, his stained white teeth prominent. Flicking a cigarette over an ashtray, he tilted his head. "You're lucky I love you, Marie. If I didn't love you, you'd be dead by now. But you ever try something like this again, and I won't hesitate to slash your throat, feed your decrepit body to the fish in the Seine River. Got that?" She nodded, a black spot clouding her vision. Puffs of smoke floated towards her and made her cough. Not that he cared. He was a narcissist. He retrieved his phone. "Watch this. No, I mean business, Marie. I don't blow damn smoke up my arse." She gripped the phone and saw him, tied up to a chair, gagged, beaten, tortured. Two black eyes, bruising across his cheek, haggard, frail, head hanging down low, as if giving up. "No, don't give up, my love. Never give up." A gasp of air grounded her. Rattling teeth must have made her look scared in front of him. "Is he all right?" He scoffed. "That depends on you. You put one foot wrong. Leave me again, and he dies. Only when we're safely back home, he'll be released." The waiter returned with the croissants and hot coffees. "Sorry about the croissants. They're a little overcooked, but these are more their natural yellow." Marie winced. "But those croissants are black, not yellow." He waved a hand. "Don't mind her. She's the constant joker. But no worries. We'll have them as they are." The waiter nodded. "Black, you say?" Benny glared. "Leave us." The waiter walked off with a curious gaze. He turned to her. "What is wrong with you? Can't you see the color of the food?" How could he not see what she was seeing? What was wrong with her? "No, everything is black and white. I don't see color anymore." He laughed. "Are you telling me you don't? You see the brown coffees, the blue ashtray, the beige tablecloth, my red tie, my dashing blue eyes?" Her heart missed a beat as she gritted her teeth. "No, I lost sight of color this morning. I woke up like this. Everything is black and white." "Interesting," he said. Marie looked past him and spotted the man she'd seen earlier, the one who had given her the note. He was standing by a lamppost, sculling a bottle of beer. Why was he around? He must have been Benny's bodyguard, in case she made a run for it. Marie and Benny stepped inside her hotel room. He pushed her towards the wardrobe. "Start packing. Our flight leaves in a few hours." "Okay, then." She pushed aside her floating tears and steeled herself by pulling out her suitcase from underneath the bed, unzipping it. As if in a surreal world, she pulled clothing off hangers and threw them into the suitcase. She was going back to her prison, away from the love of her life, If only she had been stronger a few years ago, when he had framed her ex-boyfriend, Salvatore, for murder, just so he could be free from prison. She was forced to marry him. Marriage to Benny in exchange for Salvatore's freedom. She had never explained why she'd broken up with him. Had to convince Salvatore she no longer loved him. It had cut her insides, but she had to keep him safe. Salvatore had not given up on her and found ways for them to meet secretly. But Benny always found out about their secret rendezvous. He had put plans in place, made the worst things happen. Benny involved in Salvatore crashing his car, ruining his reputation in business, injuring his friend with a beating by his henchmen, and almost killing him at least twice. Now Salvatore was threatened with death. What more could the creep do? "I'm having a shower," he said. She sat on the bed. How could she go back with him? But she had no choice when Salvatore would die if she didn't. Benny's phone lay on the bedside table. Curious, she picked it up and found his recording. Salvatore was still tied to the chair, still tortured and broken. But wait, something was weird about this video. The actions were the same. His movements repeated in a cycle, as if it was on a loop. This wasn't her true love life. This was a fake video. It had to be. Could Salvatore have arranged this? Outsmarted Benny again? She smiled to herself. Now she had a chance to do something. Fight him. Hurt him. But no, she wasn't a violent person and had morals. Nothing like Benny. What could she do? Run away again? But Benny might pursue Salvatore and never stop. He would never stop finding her until his own death. She knew that. So what could she do? She could never reason with a crazy person. A knock on the door made her jolt in her spot. It could be anyone. Her heart racing, she slowly opened the door and flinched when the man from earlier pushed past her. "Where's Benny? What are you doing here?" the man whispered in her ear. "Listen, Salvatore will set you free. Get out of here." She swallowed, her vision blurring. What? The back of her neck sweated as one ear listened in on Benny in the shower. "No time to talk. Leave. Now. We'll take care of this." She was right. It was a fake recording. He'd escaped. Where is he? The man swung the gun in his hand, scanning past her. "He's closer than you think. Go now." Her heart soared, and a spot of color flashed in her vision. But only fleetingly. It turned black and white again. What in hell is going on here? Benny grasped something from his back pocket. "Why are you here?" The man shrugged until reaching his side pocket and shooting towards Benny, who shifted to the side, the bullet grazing his cheek. But Benny pulled out his own gun and took aim. The gun hit the man square in the chest. He fell back against the door with a thud. Marie quaked. It was over. No love, no freedom. You will never leave me. Never, Marie. Get that. Nobody will ever take you away from me. Grab your things. Hurry up. He shifted the strange man's body to the bathroom, blood pouring out of him like a tap. When he returned, Benny shoved her aside and flung the remainder of her clothes into the suitcase. Now zip it up and let's leave pronto. He sat on the sofa and scrolled through his phone. A call to one of his stupid thugs. Goosebumps swarmed like insects over her arms as a dull ache at the back of her neck made her queasy. This had to stop. Slowly zipping up the baggage. A shuffling sound underneath the bed made her think she was hearing things. But no. She spotted a shoe protruding from the corner as someone glided further to the edge near the bedside table. Salvatore appeared and placed a finger across his lips, hefting a gun. She moved towards Benny, pulled the suitcase off the bed, and retrieved her bag. I'm ready. Salvatore flung himself in the open and approached Benny with an aim of his gun. Put your hands up. Now. Benny flinched. You have a death wish, don't you? You might have got away from my men, but you'll never win this war. I will fight you to the death, Benny. I don't care if I die, so long as Marie goes free. Free from your dungeon. Free from your psychopathic world. You loser. He faced Marie. Go now. I'll take care of this. She shook her head. We fight with our hands. Fight to the death. Benny scoffed. Fine with me. He shoved his pistol inside his back pocket and took a fighting stance while Salvatore did the same. No, please, Salvatore. Just go. I can't be with you. Benny's my husband. I'm going back to Melbourne with him. Please leave. No, Marie, enough is enough. Benny threw the first punch, then another and another, until he went down. He gouged one of Salvatore's eyes and flung his head hard against the carpet. Marie moved. No, Benny, stop. I'll come with you. Please stop. Benny softened, giving Salvatore the chance to pound into Benny with a blow to the kidney, and then a swift kick in the leg. Lamps overturned, magazines tumbled in the air, and the coffee table shifted. Benny kicked him on the side of his abdomen, and he keeled over. She had to do something. But what? Benny reached for something in his pants pocket. A flick knife. No. He was going to break the rules. Not on her watch. Salvatore attempted to rise when Benny stepped forward. A smirk plastered over his face. He wandered over to him when the knife swung in the air. Marie reached for his back pocket, pulled out the gun, and aimed. Stop, or I'll shoot, he scoffed. You don't have the guts. Don't even know guns. Benny ignored her, about to stab Salvatore in the throat. Marie pulled the trigger and shot him twice in the stomach. The knife fell, and he dropped like a sack of potatoes. Blood seeped onto the carpet, and she watched and waited for the life force to draw out of him. 3 years of hell. 3 years of watching over her shoulder. 3 years of fearing the lives of her loved ones. Walking quietly on eggshells. Those days were over as the rotten apple drew his last breath. Salvatore shuffled towards her and hugged her. "I love you, Marie. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from him. You've always protected me." She beamed. "I love you too, Salvatore." She savored the gentle caress of her lover's strong arms around her waist. Her eyes shifted, her surroundings vibrating with color. Nor more colorless world. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.